Welcome back to Live Now from Fox, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us, continuing to bring you some of the biggest top stories of the day. And this was a big one as John Bolton, President Donald Trump's former national security advisor turned adversary, has been indicted by a federal grand jury out in Maryland. He is now facing 18 charges, 8 counts of transmission of national defense information and 10 counts of retention of national defense information here. So we want to continue to talk about this, bring in our next guest to help break it all down. John Day, legal analyst and an attorney. Thanks so much for being with us here, John. So this is a moment here where you have a former Trump official, now turned foe, being indicted on 18 counts. What do you make here of the indictment?
At here is John Bolton facing 10 years for each of these 18 counts. Now, if he's convicted, these are not years he's going to serve. Obviously, sentencing is much less than that. But what the U.S. Department of Justice is saying is that Bolton retained and transmitted classified information, and he claims it was related to this book he was writing. He claims the FBI has known about this since 2021. But we have a lot more information from DOJ in the indictment about what the allegations are, and that the information that he had, he kept at his home. He says it was diaries. He said he never transmitted any classified documents. But this indictment today, we know a lot more information about what the allegations are from the U.S. government, and how Bolton is going to defend this, according to his lawyer, is his claim that this was not classified, this was not transmitted to anyone, there was no danger here, and that the FBI has known about this for about 4 or 5 years. So it's going to be a fascinating battle to see how this plays out.
Yeah, no doubt. And prosecutors wrote in the indictment that during the time he was national security advisor to Trump, Bolton shared more than 1,000 pages of information about his day-to-day activities. And John, also in this indictment, it talks about how it was handled. Allegedly, John Bolton emailing some of the key information and notes via unsecured email from like Google and even AOL. How will that play into a role here for not only the prosecution, but the defense of John Bolton as well?
Right. Well, again, we get a lot more information today than we had before. And the allegations are, it's disturbing, of course, if the idea is that there is classified information being sent by an email program. Is it a personal email program? What sort of protections are there? And again, there's even more information that it sounds like, according to DOJ, that there was a hack by a foreign government, possibly Iran, that Bolton's material was apparently or possibly hacked by some foreign actor. We don't know all the details about that yet, but this certainly raises questions about what exactly the claims are in the indictment and what the specific allegations are, and how Bolton's going to defend this. I mean, if the claim from Bolton's side is, well, these were all simply notes he was taking, these were diaries he was keeping, Abby Lowell, who's Bolton's defense lawyer, said, look, everybody in these positions keeps diaries to keep track of what's going on, to keep journals. And so they're going to try to split this fine line or this fine hair of, well, these may have been classified documents, classified information, but he didn't transmit the documents. He was making notes and he put them into a personal file of some sort. So it's going to be fascinating from a technical standpoint, from a lawyerly standpoint, to see how it breaks down from the prosecution and what the defense's moves are.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, that's such a good point there, John, because it'll be interesting on the technical aspect here of this when we're talking about, okay, when you're really going to be looking at the metadata probably of when these files were created, how were they shared and really transmitted, to really do a deep dive and to kind of showcase, okay, we have all of these pages that maybe were written down or typed on this certain day.
Right. That's going to be a key part of this case. And another part that's interesting is that apparently the prosecution team that's on this case is some very high level, very experienced national security prosecutors. It's somewhat different than the allegations about other recent indictments of people by the Department of Justice who they claim were critical of Trump. So this one has some teeth to it. And even I think the critics are going to have to acknowledge that the allegations coming out of DOJ are very specific. And they are something that is being put together by a team that apparently is very well experienced in national security prosecutions.
And you really have to think too about if prosecutors will highlight, okay, you were dealing with an national security advisor, and coming up with all these things that he probably has done in his career when he's trying to avoid people seeing critical information. And then you have John Bolton here allegedly just putting these notes and then, in just a computer that could just easily be hacked and maybe even hacked.
Right. And again, we've seen this time and time again in various scenarios. And that's one of the issues here is if you are handling classified information, at what level, at what point do you say, I'm not going to risk this? I'm not going to send this to myself in an email. I'm not going to keep diary notes that can be easily traced to some kind of classified document. I mean, it's a fine line. And again, senior officials do engage in this kind of note taking and journal keeping, and that's for their own benefit to try to make sure that they can keep track of what's going on. So there was a practical reason for it. But if you're doing this because you're planning on writing a memoir, that could be a little bit different. And so I think there's a lot here that we haven't seen yet, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yeah, you really, really will. John, thanks so much for jumping on here and joining us to give us some insight here on how this case is going to be handled. We really appreciate it as always.
Thanks.
You take care.